Sarah Martinez had always been different from other girls in her small Texas town. While her classmates painted their nails and talked about boys, she spent weekends at the shooting range with her father, a retired Marine. Her steady hands and sharp eyes caught everyone's attention from the very first time she picked up a rifle at age 12. The sound of gunfire echoed across the desert training ground as Sarah adjusted her scope for the 100th time that day. Sweat dripped down her face despite the early morning hour. The temperature would climb to over 100 degrees by noon, but she had learned to ignore discomfort long ago. Her spotter, Corporal Johnson, lay beside her in the sand, watching through binoculars. "Target is 800 meters out," Johnson whispered, wind coming from the east at about 5 miles per hour. Sarah controlled her breathing just like her father had taught her years ago. In through the nose, hold for 3 seconds, then slowly out through the mouth. Her heartbeat slowed to a steady rhythm. The world around her seemed to fade away until only she and the target existed. The rifle in her hands was a .300 Winchester Magnum, a weapon she had grown to love and respect during her 3 years as a Navy sniper. Most people assumed the Navy only fought on ships, but Sarah knew better. Navy SEALs operated everywhere, and they needed skilled snipers to watch their backs. She squeezed the trigger gently, feeling the familiar kick against her shoulder. The bullet flew true, striking the target dead center. Johnson lowered his binoculars with a satisfied nod. "Perfect shot, Martinez. That's your 15th bullseye in a row." Sarah smiled but didn't celebrate. Excellence was expected, not praised, in her line of work. She had fought hard to earn her place among the elite snipers who supported SEAL operations. Being one of only 3 women in the program meant she had to be twice as good as everyone else just to be considered equal. Her journey to this desert training ground had not been easy. Growing up in a military family, Sarah always knew she wanted to serve her country. Her father, Sergeant Major Miguel Martinez, had served 3 tours in Afghanistan before retiring. He taught her everything about weapons, tactics, and most importantly, discipline. When Sarah turned 18, she enlisted in the Navy despite her father's concerns about women in combat roles. The military was changing, he told her, but change came slowly. She would face challenges that male soldiers never had to consider. Basic training tested every limit Sarah thought she had. The physical demands were brutal, but the mental pressure was even worse. Some instructors seemed determined to break her spirit. Believing women had no place in combat, Sarah refused to quit. Even when drill sergeants screamed in her face and questioned her commitment. Her breakthrough came during advanced marksmanship training. While other recruits struggled to hit targets at 300 meters, Sarah consistently struck targets at twice that distance. Her natural talent, combined with years of practice with her father, set her apart from everyone else. The sniper school selection process was the hardest thing Sarah had ever attempted. Out of 200 candidates, only 30 would be chosen. The physical requirements included carrying a 50-pound pack for 20 miles in under 4 hours, swimming 2 miles in full gear, and completing an obstacle course that eliminated half the applicants. Sarah finished the physical tests in the top 10%. But the real challenge was the psychological evaluation. Military psychologists probed every aspect of her personality, looking for weaknesses that might emerge under pressure. They asked about her childhood, her relationships, her fears and motivations. "Why do you want to be a sniper, Martinez?" the chief psychologist had asked during her final interview. "Because I want to protect the people who protect us," Sarah answered honestly. SEALs go into impossible situations to keep America safe. They need someone watching their backs who will never miss when it matters most. The psychologist made notes and asked follow-up questions about her ability to take a human life. Sarah understood the weight of that responsibility. Her father had explained that taking a life, even in war, changes a person forever. She was prepared for that burden because she believed some things were worth fighting for. After graduating sniper school ranked 2nd in her class, Sarah received orders to join a special operations support unit. Her mission was simple but critical: provide overwatch for SEAL teams during high-risk operations. When those elite warriors needed someone eliminated from long range, they called for sniper support. Her first deployment took her to the mountains of Afghanistan, where she spent 6 months providing support for counter-terrorism operations. The work was dangerous and often boring, requiring hours of motionless observation followed by seconds of intense action. Sarah excelled at both aspects of the job. During that deployment, she made 14 confirmed kills, each one a terrorist who posed an immediate threat to American forces. She never took pleasure in those deaths, but she felt pride in protecting her fellow service members. Every shot she fired meant another SEAL team member went home safely to their family. Now, back in the United States for advanced training, Sarah prepared for her next deployment. Intelligence reports suggested increased terrorist activity in several regions where SEAL teams operated. The demand for skilled snipers was higher than ever. As she cleaned her rifle in the armory that evening, Sarah thought about the responsibility that came with her skills. Tomorrow would bring more training, more preparation for missions where failure meant the death of America's finest warriors. She had worked too hard to let them down now. Her phone buzzed with a text message from her father. "Saw the news about your promotion to Petty Officer First Class. Proud of you, Mija. Stay safe out there." Sarah smiled and typed back, "Thanks, Dad. I learned from the best." She finished cleaning her weapon and secured it in her locker. Tomorrow's training would test her skills in urban environments, where the margin for error was even smaller. SEAL teams operated in cities around the world, and their snipers needed to be ready for any situation. As Sarah walked back to her barracks, she felt the weight of expectation on her shoulders. Lives depended on her ability to place a bullet exactly where it needed to go, when it needed to be there. She had never missed when it mattered, and she never intended to start. The helicopter blades chopped through the humid air as Sarah checked her equipment one final time. Her .300 Winchester Magnum lay secured in its case beside her, along with enough ammunition for any situation they might encounter. Across from her sat Lieutenant Commander Jake Reaper Thompson, leader of SEAL Team 7, the unit she would be supporting on this mission. "Intel says we're looking at a high-value target in a compound about 2 miles outside Kandahar." Thompson briefed his team over the helicopter's noise. "Hassan al-Rashid, bomb maker responsible for at least 6 IED attacks on our convoys this month. We go in fast, grab him, and get out before his security realizes what happened." Sarah studied the aerial photographs of the compound. The target building sat on a hill surrounded by smaller structures that could hide enemy fighters. Multiple escape routes led away from the main building through narrow alleys and side streets. It was exactly the kind of complex environment where a sniper's support could mean the difference between mission success and disaster. "Martinez, you'll set up on the ridge about 800 meters north of the compound," Thompson continued. "Your job is to watch our backs and eliminate any threats that try to flank us or cut off our escape route. The local Taliban know we're in the area, so expect company." The helicopter began its descent toward the landing zone, a flat stretch of desert about 3 miles from the target. Sarah felt the familiar calm that came before combat operations. Her training had prepared her for this moment, and she was ready to prove herself once again. As soon as the helicopter touched down, the SEAL team moved with practiced efficiency. Thompson led his 7-man team toward the compound while Sarah headed for her overwatch position. She carried 60 pounds of equipment, including her rifle, ammunition, communication gear, and survival supplies for a 24-hour mission. The ridge offered a perfect view of the entire compound and surrounding area. Sarah set up her position among the rocks, using natural cover to remain invisible from below. Her spotter for this mission was Petty Officer Second Class Mike Reynolds, a veteran of 4 deployments who had worked with female snipers before. "Good positioning, Martinez," Reynolds said as he set up his spotting scope. "We can see every approach to that compound from here. If anyone tries to interfere with the team, we'll spot them long before they become a problem." Sarah adjusted her scope and began studying the compound through her rifle sight. The main building showed signs of activity, with guards walking patrol routes around the perimeter. Several vehicles were parked near what appeared to be a side entrance, probably ready for a quick escape if needed. "Overwatch in position," Sarah reported through her radio. "I have eyes on the target building and surrounding area. Counting at least 12 hostiles in view, probably more inside the buildings." Thompson's voice crackled back through her earpiece. "Copy that, Overwatch. We're beginning our approach now. Estimated time to target is 15 minutes. The next quarter hour passed slowly as Sarah watched the SEAL team move through the darkness toward their objective. They moved like shadows, avoiding the guards' patrol routes and using buildings for cover. Years of training and experience showed in every step they took. Then everything changed in an instant. A guard spotted movement near the compound's eastern wall and raised an alarm. Shouts in Arabic echoed across the compound as lights came on and armed men poured out of buildings. The carefully planned stealth mission had just become a running gunfight. Contact! Contact! Thompson's voice came through the radio with the sound of gunfire in the background. We're taking fire from multiple positions. Overwatch, we need immediate support on the southern approach. Sarah swung her rifle toward the southern side of the compound and immediately spotted the threat. 6 fighters were moving through an alley, trying to get behind the SEAL team's position. They carried AK-47 rifles and moved with the confidence of experienced fighters. I have eyes on 6 hostiles attempting to flank from the south, Sarah reported, her voice calm despite the chaos below. Taking the shot. She selected the lead fighter, a bearded man who appeared to be directing the others. Her crosshairs settled on his center mass as she controlled her breathing. The range was exactly 730 meters, well within her comfort zone. The rifle bucked against her shoulder as she fired. The .300 Magnum bullet struck the target in the chest, dropping him instantly. The other fighters scattered, seeking cover among the buildings. But Sarah was already tracking her next target. Target down, she reported, searching for another clear shot. The surviving fighters had taken cover behind a low wall, but one made the mistake of exposing his shoulder as he tried to get a better firing position. Sarah's second shot struck him in the upper torso, spinning him around before he collapsed. 2 down, 4 remaining in southern position. Sarah updated the team while scanning for more threats. Reynolds spotted movement on the compound's western side. 3 more hostiles moving toward the extraction point, he called out. Range 900 meters, moving fast through the market area. Sarah shifted her position and acquired the new targets. These fighters were running between vendor stalls in what appeared to be an abandoned market, using the wooden structures for cover. The range was at the edge of her rifle's effective distance, requiring perfect shot placement. She chose the trailing fighter, knowing that dropping him might cause the others to take cover rather than continue their advance. The shot was more difficult because the target was moving, requiring her to lead him slightly to account for his movement. The bullet found its mark, and the fighter stumbled and fell among the market stalls. The other 2 immediately dove for cover just as Sarah had hoped. They were no longer advancing toward the SEAL team's extraction route. 3 targets neutralized, Sarah reported. Southern and western approaches are clear, but the battle was far from over. More fighters had appeared from hidden positions throughout the compound, and the SEAL team was taking heavy fire from multiple directions. Sarah could hear the distinctive sound of Thompson's M4 carbine mixing with the deeper bark of enemy AK-47s. Overwatch, we've got the target, but we need a clear path to the extraction point. Thompson's voice came through the radio with strain evident in his tone. There's a machine gun position on the roof of the blue building blocking our route. Sarah scanned the rooftops until she found the machine gun nest. 2 fighters had set up a PKM machine gun on the flat roof of a 2-story building, and they were pouring sustained fire toward the SEAL team's position. The range was over 1,000 meters, pushing her equipment to its limits. I see the machine gun position, Sarah confirmed. Range is long, but I can take the shot. She adjusted her scope for the extended range and studied the wind conditions. The flags on nearby buildings showed a crosswind from the east, which would affect her bullet's flight path. She made the necessary adjustments and focused on the machine gunner. This shot would be the most challenging of her career so far. The range, the wind, and the target's position all worked against her. But the SEAL team was counting on her to clear their escape route, and failure was not an option. Sarah controlled her breathing and slowly squeezed the trigger. The bullet flew through the night air for what felt like an eternity before finding its target. Sarah watched through her scope as the machine gunner jerked backward and fell silent. The sustained fire that had pinned down the SEAL team stopped instantly, replaced by confused shouts from the remaining fighter on the roof. Machine gun position eliminated, Sarah reported, already scanning for the next threat. Path to extraction should be clear now. Reynolds tapped her shoulder and pointed toward the compound's main entrance. Company coming up the access road. Looks like reinforcements in 2 vehicles. Sarah swung her rifle toward the road and counted at least 8 fighters jumping out of pickup trucks. They moved with military precision, suggesting these were not local militia but trained soldiers. Their weapons looked newer and better maintained than those carried by the fighters she had already engaged. Multiple hostiles approaching from the main road. Sarah warned the SEAL team. These guys look like they know what they're doing. Thompson's response came through heavy breathing and the sound of movement. Copy that. We're moving to the extraction point now, but we'll be exposed crossing the open ground. Can you keep those reinforcements busy? Sarah studied the approaching fighters through her scope. They had spread out in a tactical formation, using the vehicles and roadside cover to advance toward the compound. Taking them all down would require careful shot selection and perfect timing. She chose the fighter who appeared to be their leader, a tall man with military bearing who was directing the others' movements. Her first shot dropped him in the middle of the road, causing immediate confusion among his followers. Some dove for cover while others continued advancing, unsure of where the shots were coming from. Her second target was a fighter carrying what looked like a rocket-propelled grenade launcher. That weapon could destroy the helicopter sent to extract the SEAL team, making it her highest priority target. The shot was clean, and the RPG carrier fell before he could bring his weapon to bear. Keep it up, Martinez, Reynolds encouraged as he tracked the remaining fighters through his spotting scope. You're buying the team the time they need. Through her radio, Sarah could hear the SEAL team fighting their way toward the extraction point. Occasional bursts of gunfire mixed with Thompson's tactical commands as they moved through the compound. The mission was taking longer than planned, and dawn was only a few hours away. More lights appeared on the horizon, suggesting additional enemy forces were responding to the firefight. The local Taliban commander had probably called for every available fighter to converge on the compound. Sarah and the SEAL team would soon be heavily outnumbered. Overwatch, this is Extraction. A new voice came through Sarah's radio. We're inbound with 2 helicopters. ETA 15 minutes, be advised. We're seeing significant enemy movement throughout the area. Sarah acknowledged the transmission while continuing to engage targets around the compound. Her ammunition supply was holding up well, but she had already fired more rounds than anticipated. Each shot had to count, especially with unknown challenges still ahead. The SEAL team finally reached the designated extraction point, a flat area about half a mile from the compound. Sarah could see them through her scope. 8 figures moving in formation with their captured target. Thompson had accomplished his mission, but getting everyone home safely was still uncertain. Overwatch, we're at the LZ, Thompson reported. Hassan is secured and ready for transport. How's our security looking from your position? Sarah conducted a systematic scan of the surrounding area. The immediate threats had been neutralized, but more fighters were definitely moving toward their position. Several groups approached from different directions, suggesting a coordinated effort to surround the extraction point. Multiple groups converging on your position, Sarah warned. I count at least 20 hostiles approaching from 3 directions. The extraction birds need to get here fast. Reynolds had been monitoring radio frequencies and caught concerning chatter. Martinez, the enemy is coordinating this response. They know about the helicopter pickup and they're trying to position anti-aircraft weapons to shoot it down. Sarah's blood ran cold. If the helicopters were shot down, the entire mission would become a disaster. The SEAL team would be stranded deep in enemy territory with no immediate support available. Her job had suddenly become much more critical. Where are they setting up the anti-aircraft weapons? Sarah asked while continuing to scan through her scope. Sounds like they're trying to get a shoulder-fired missile launcher to the high ground east of the extraction point, Reynolds replied after listening to more radio traffic. If they succeed, our birds will be sitting ducks. Sarah studied the eastern hills through her scope until she spotted movement among the rocks. 3 fighters were climbing toward a position that would give them a clear shot at incoming helicopters. One carried what appeared to be a Stinger missile launcher, exactly the weapon that could destroy their extraction aircraft. The range was extreme, nearly 1,200 meters, and the targets were moving uphill through difficult terrain. Sarah had never attempted a shot at this distance under combat conditions, but she had no choice. The SEAL team's survival depended on stopping those fighters before they reached their firing position. She adjusted her scope for maximum magnification and studied the wind conditions carefully. The mountain terrain created unpredictable air currents that could throw off her bullet's flight path. She would get only one chance at this shot before the fighters reached cover. The lead fighter carrying the missile launcher paused to rest about 2/3 of the way up the hill. Sarah saw her opportunity and took it. She controlled her breathing, made final adjustments for wind and elevation, and squeezed the trigger. The shot felt perfect as it left her rifle, but the extreme range meant several seconds before impact. Sarah watched through her scope as the bullet struck the fighter in the upper chest, sending him tumbling down the hillside with the missile launcher spinning away into the rocks. Anti-aircraft threat neutralized, Sarah reported with satisfaction. The missile launcher is out of commission, but her celebration was short-lived. The sound of helicopters approaching mixed with increased enemy fire from multiple positions around the extraction point. The final phase of the mission was about to begin, and it would test everyone's skills and courage. Reynolds pointed toward the compound where a new threat was emerging. Technical approaching from the south, he called out, using military slang for a pickup truck mounted with a heavy machine gun. That thing could chew up our helicopters if it gets into position. Sarah swung her rifle toward the approaching vehicle. The truck bounced and weaved as it raced across the rough terrain, making it a challenging target. She would need to time her shot perfectly to hit either the driver or the gunner before they could engage the helicopters. The truck's machine gun began firing at the extraction point, sending tracers streaking through the darkness. Sarah could see the SEAL team taking cover behind rocks and equipment as heavy bullets chewed up the ground around them. She led the target slightly, accounting for the truck's speed and direction, then fired. Her bullet shattered the windshield and the vehicle swerved violently before crashing into a dry creek bed. The machine gun fell silent as smoke began rising from the engine compartment. Technical neutralized, Sarah reported as the first extraction helicopter appeared on the horizon. The first helicopter's rotors created a dust storm as it descended toward the extraction point. Sarah watched through her scope as the SEAL team prepared to load their prisoner and equipment. Everything seemed to be going according to plan until Reynolds grabbed her arm urgently. "Sniper," he hissed, pointing toward a distant building. "Enemy sniper on the water tower about 1,400 meters southeast. He's lining up a shot on the helicopter." Sarah's heart pounded as she located the threat. A lone figure crouched on a platform near the top of the water tower, and she could see the glint of a rifle scope in the moonlight. The enemy sniper had positioned himself perfectly to engage the landing helicopter, and his elevated position gave him an excellent field of fire. At 1,400 meters, this would be the longest shot of Sarah's career. The distance pushed her rifle beyond its normal effective range, and any miscalculation would result in a miss. But if she didn't take the shot, the enemy sniper would almost certainly hit the helicopter or its crew. "I see him," Sarah confirmed, making rapid adjustments to her scope. "This is going to be a difficult shot." She studied the conditions carefully. The wind had shifted slightly, now coming from the northwest at an estimated 8 miles per hour. The bullet drop at this range would be significant, requiring her to aim several feet above the target. Temperature and humidity would also affect the bullet's flight path. The enemy sniper appeared to be preparing his own shot, adjusting his position for better stability. Sarah realized she had only seconds before he fired at the helicopter. There was no time for multiple range calculations or perfect setup. She estimated the holdover, adjusted for wind drift, and controlled her breathing. The crosshairs settled on the enemy sniper's upper torso, the largest target area at this extreme range. Sarah's finger found the trigger and applied steady pressure. The rifle kicked against her shoulder and the bullet began its long journey through the night air. At this distance, the projectile would take nearly 2 seconds to reach its target, time for many things to go wrong. Sarah held her breath as she watched through the scope. The enemy sniper suddenly jerked and fell backward, tumbling from the water tower platform. Her shot had found its mark just as he was about to fire at the helicopter. "Target down," Sarah reported, feeling a mixture of relief and professional satisfaction. Sniper threat eliminated. The first helicopter completed its landing and she watched the SEAL team quickly load Hassan al-Rashid aboard. Thompson gave a thumbs-up signal before climbing into the aircraft himself. Within 30 seconds, the helicopter was airborne again, carrying the captured bomb maker toward a secure detention facility. But Sarah and Reynolds were not going home yet. The second helicopter would extract them, but first they needed to provide security as it approached their position. Enemy forces were still active throughout the area, and the extraction helicopter would be vulnerable during its approach and landing. Extraction 2. "This is Overwatch," Sarah called to the incoming helicopter. "Be advised, multiple hostile forces remain active in the area. We'll provide cover during your approach." The pilot's voice crackled back through her radio. "Copy that, Overwatch. We're 5 minutes out. Keep us informed of any threats." Reynolds had been monitoring enemy radio communications and provided an update. They know about the second helicopter, he warned. Sounds like they're repositioning to attack it during landing. Sarah began a systematic scan of potential threat positions around their landing zone. The area offered numerous hiding places where enemy fighters could set up ambush positions. She needed to identify and neutralize any threats before the helicopter arrived. Movement caught her eye near a cluster of abandoned buildings about 600 meters away. Several fighters were positioning themselves with clear views of the landing zone. Their intent was obvious. They planned to attack the helicopter while it was most vulnerable. 3 hostiles setting up an ambush position near the old market buildings, Sarah reported to the helicopter crew. I'm engaging now. Her first shot struck the lead fighter who was carrying what appeared to be an RPG launcher. The weapon spun away as the man fell, eliminating the most serious threat to the incoming helicopter. The other fighters immediately sought cover, but Sarah had already identified their positions. Her second shot hit a fighter who was trying to move to better cover. The remaining enemy fighter stayed hidden behind a concrete wall, smart enough to realize that exposing himself would mean certain death. 2 down, 1 remaining in concealment, Sarah updated. The RPG threat has been eliminated. More enemy fighters appeared from different directions, apparently coordinating their movements to overwhelm the extraction site. Sarah counted at least 12 hostiles approaching from multiple angles. Too many for her to engage effectively before the helicopter arrived. We've got a problem, Reynolds observed grimly. Too many targets, not enough time. Sarah made a tactical decision that would define the rest of the mission. Instead of trying to eliminate every threat, she would focus on the most dangerous ones while forcing the others to keep their heads down. Sustained accurate fire would disrupt their attack plans and buy time for the helicopter to complete its mission. She began engaging targets in order of priority, starting with anyone carrying heavy weapons or directing the attack. Her shots came at measured intervals, each one carefully aimed to maximize psychological impact on the surviving fighters. The enemy forces quickly realized they were taking fire from a skilled sniper, and their advance slowed considerably. Fighters who had been moving boldly across open ground now crawled between cover points, reducing their effectiveness and buying precious time. Extraction. 2. You're clear for landing, Sarah called to the helicopter as it appeared on the horizon. I'm keeping the bad guys busy, but you need to get in and out fast. The helicopter pilot proved his skill by approaching from an unexpected angle, using a ridgeline to mask his approach until the last moment. The aircraft settled onto the landing zone quickly, with its crew chief already preparing to help Sarah and Reynolds aboard. Sarah gathered her equipment while Reynolds packed the spotting gear. They had been in position for over 3 hours and both were exhausted from the sustained combat. But the mission was almost complete, and they could finally head home. Time to go, Reynolds called out as he started moving toward the helicopter. Sarah took one last look through her scope to check for immediate threats. The enemy fighters had backed off slightly, intimidated by her accurate fire, but they were still present and dangerous. The helicopter would be vulnerable during takeoff, especially in the first few seconds when it was gaining altitude. She spotted movement in a building that overlooked their landing zone. An enemy fighter appeared at a window, raising what looked like an AK-47 to fire at the helicopter. Sarah's final shot of the mission struck him before he could pull the trigger, and he disappeared back into the building. Last threat neutralized, Sarah reported as she shouldered her rifle and ran toward the waiting helicopter. Area is as secure as we can make it. The crew chief helped her aboard, and she settled into a seat as the helicopter lifted off. Through the open door, she could see muzzle flashes from enemy positions throughout the area, but they were firing blindly into the darkness. The sniper who had caused them so much trouble was beyond their reach now. As the helicopter gained altitude and turned toward home base, Sarah reflected on the mission's success. The SEAL team had captured a high-value target, and everyone was returning safely. Her marksmanship had played a crucial role in that success, eliminating threats that could have turned the mission into a disaster. Reynolds handed her a bottle of water and grinned. Outstanding shooting tonight, Martinez. That shot on the water tower was incredible. Sarah smiled but remained focused on the bigger picture. Tonight had proven her value as a sniper, but it was just one mission among many. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to prove herself. 6 months after the successful mission to capture Hassan al-Rashid, Sarah found herself in a completely different environment. The mountains of Eastern Europe were cold and unforgiving, a sharp contrast to the desert heat she had grown accustomed to in Afghanistan. Intelligence reports indicated that a new terrorist network was using this remote region to plan attacks against NATO forces. The mission briefing had been unusually tense. A joint task force of American SEALs and European Special Forces would raid a suspected training camp hidden in the mountainous border region. Sarah's job was to provide overwatch from a position nearly 2 miles away from the target, the longest operational distance she had ever been assigned. Her new spotter was Staff Sergeant Lisa Chen, a former Army Ranger who had transferred to Special Operations Support after being wounded in Iraq. Chen brought years of experience and a calm professionalism that Sarah respected immediately. "Weather's going to be a factor tonight," Chen observed as they studied satellite images of their target area. "Temperature is dropping to near freezing, and there's a chance of snow after midnight." Sarah nodded while checking her equipment one final time. Cold weather would affect her rifle's performance, requiring adjustments to her scope settings and shooting techniques. The .300 Winchester Magnum performed well in cold conditions, but every environmental factor had to be considered for shots at extreme range. The insertion went smoothly despite challenging terrain. A military helicopter dropped Sarah and Chen at a landing zone 8 miles from their objective, requiring a difficult nighttime hike through rocky mountain paths. Both women carried heavy packs loaded with specialized equipment for extended operations. Their designated overwatch position was a rocky outcrop that offered commanding views of the valley below. The terrorist training camp sat nestled between 2 ridges, with multiple buildings and what appeared to be obstacle courses and firing ranges. Thermal imaging revealed at least 30 people moving around the facility. "Good position," Chen commented as she set up her spotting equipment. "Range to target is just over 2,000 meters. That's pushing the limits of what your rifle can do reliably." Sarah had never attempted a shot at such extreme range during actual combat. The longest confirmed kill in military history was slightly over 2,400 meters, achieved by a Canadian sniper in Afghanistan. Tonight she might be called upon to approach that record. The Joint Task Force began their approach at 2 in the morning, moving through the valley in 3 separate teams. Sarah watched through her scope as they advanced toward the camp, their movement barely visible even with night vision equipment. Everything went wrong at exactly 2:37 a.m. A guard patrol spotted movement near the camp perimeter and raised an alarm. Floodlights illuminated the entire valley as armed fighters poured out of buildings throughout the facility. The carefully planned stealth operation had become a full-scale battle in seconds. "Contact! Contact!" The radio crackled with urgent voices as multiple teams engaged enemy forces. "We're taking heavy fire from fortified positions. Request immediate support." Sarah scanned the battlefield through her scope, looking for high-value targets. At 2,000 meters, individual fighters looked tiny through even her highest magnification setting. Making accurate shots at this distance would require perfect conditions and flawless technique. Chen spotted the first priority target. "Machine gun nest on the roof of the main building," she called out. 2 operators, probably a PKM or similar weapon. "They're raking the eastern approach team." Sarah located the machine gun position and studied it carefully. The gunner and his assistant were clearly visible in the floodlights, but the extreme range made precise shot placement extremely difficult. A miss might reveal their position without eliminating the threat. She made calculations for bullet drop, wind drift, and atmospheric conditions. At 2,000 meters, her bullet would drop nearly 40 feet and take almost 3 seconds to reach its target. The slightest error in estimation would result in a miss. Wind is variable, shifting between northeast and east. Chen provided continuous updates. "Estimate 6 to 8 miles per hour, but it's gusty in this terrain." Sarah settled into her shooting position and controlled her breathing. The crosshairs wavered slightly as she tried to maintain perfect sight alignment at maximum magnification. This shot would test every skill she had developed over years of training and combat experience. She squeezed the trigger during a momentary lull in the wind. The rifle's recoil drove her scope away from the target, and she quickly reacquired her sight picture to observe the bullet's impact. Through her scope, she saw the machine gunner suddenly jerk backward and fall silent. The sustained fire that had been suppressing the eastern team stopped immediately, allowing them to advance toward their objective. "Target neutralized," Sarah reported, feeling a surge of satisfaction. Machine gun position is eliminated, but her success had come at a cost. The muzzle flash from her rifle had been visible across the valley, and enemy fighters were now aware of her general position. Several began moving toward the base of her ridge, probably planning to climb up and eliminate the sniper threat. "We've got company coming," Chen warned after spotting movement through her thermal imaging scope. "At least 6 hostiles climbing the eastern slope. They'll reach our position in about 20 minutes if we don't stop them." Sarah faced a tactical dilemma. Engaging the climbers would reveal her exact position, but leaving them alone would eventually compromise her ability to support the main mission. She decided to eliminate the immediate threat while maintaining support for the assault teams below. The climbing fighters were much closer, only about 800 meters away, making them easier targets. Sarah's first shot struck the lead climber, sending him tumbling down the rocky slope. The others immediately sought cover among the boulders, but their advance had been stopped. Chen continued monitoring the main battle while Sarah dealt with the flanking threat. "The assault teams have reached the outer buildings," she reported. "But there's a sniper in the water tower that's giving them problems. Range is about 2,100 meters. Sarah swung her rifle back toward the main target area and located the enemy sniper position. A lone figure crouched behind sandbags on the water tower platform, and she could see muzzle flashes as he fired at the advancing assault teams. This shot would be even more challenging than her first success. The range was greater, the target was partially concealed, and the enemy sniper was actively moving between shots. Sarah would need to time her shot perfectly to catch him when he was exposed. She watched the enemy sniper's pattern through her scope. He would rise slightly, fire 2 or 3 quick shots, then duck behind cover to reload. During his firing phase, his upper torso was visible for about 3 seconds. Sarah prepared for the shot during his next reload cycle. When the enemy sniper rose to fire again, she was ready. Her bullet struck him center mass, and he toppled from the water tower platform. "Enemy sniper eliminated," Sarah reported as the assault teams continued their advance. The battle continued for another hour, as the Joint Task Force systematically cleared each building in the terrorist camp. Sarah provided overwatch support, eliminating threats as they appeared and protecting the assault team's flanks and rear areas. By dawn, the mission was complete. The terrorist training facility had been destroyed, and several high-value targets had been captured alive for interrogation. Most importantly, the Joint Task Force had suffered only minor casualties despite the fierce resistance they encountered. As Sarah and Chen prepared to move to their extraction point, Chen shook her head in amazement. "Those shots you made tonight will be talked about for years," she said. "Over 2,000 meters in combat conditions. That's some of the finest shooting I've ever seen." Sarah felt proud of her performance, but she also understood the weight of what she had accomplished. Each successful shot meant that American and Allied forces went home safely to their families. That responsibility was both a burden and an honor that she carried with deep respect. The helicopter ride back to base gave her time to reflect on how far she had come since that first day at the shooting range with her father. Tonight she had proven that gender meant nothing when it came to protecting the warriors who fought for freedom around the world. The emergency briefing came at 3 in the morning, pulling Sarah from deep sleep in her quarters at the forward operating base. Intelligence had intercepted communications indicating an imminent attack on a convoy carrying humanitarian supplies to isolated villages. The convoy included medical personnel and food aid for civilians caught in the ongoing conflict. Lieutenant Commander Thompson looked grim as he addressed the hastily assembled team. "We have 8 hours before the convoy enters the kill zone," he explained, pointing to a map of the mountain pass. "Intelligence suggests at least 20 fighters with heavy weapons positioned along the route. If that convoy gets hit, we'll lose not just the supplies but probably a dozen aid workers." Sarah studied the terrain carefully. The mountain pass was a natural choke point with steep cliffs on both sides, perfect for an ambush. The convoy would be completely exposed with no cover and limited options for escape if attacked. "What's the plan?" she asked, already anticipating her role in the mission. "You and Chen will insert here." Thompson indicated a position on the map, about 1,500 meters from the suspected ambush site. "Your job is to identify enemy positions and eliminate key threats before the convoy enters the danger zone." The timeline was tight, requiring immediate departure and a difficult helicopter insertion into hostile territory. Sarah gathered her equipment quickly, including extra ammunition and her .300 Winchester Magnum rifle. This mission would likely require multiple long-range shots under time pressure. Chen met her at the helicopter pad, both women moving with the efficiency that came from months of working together. Their partnership had developed into an almost telepathic understanding of each other's capabilities and thinking. "Weather looks decent," Chen observed as they boarded the transport helicopter. "Clear skies, light winds from the west. Conditions should be favorable for long-range shooting." The flight to the insertion point took 45 minutes through treacherous mountain terrain. Sarah used the time to review intelligence photos and plan her approach to the Overwatch position. Every detail had to be perfect because civilian lives depended on mission success. Their landing zone was a small clearing about 2 miles from the suspected ambush site. From there, they would have to climb through rocky terrain to reach the observation point that would give them views of the entire mountain pass. The climb took nearly 2 hours, with both women carrying heavy equipment up steep slopes in darkness. Sarah's pack weighed over 70 pounds, including her rifle, ammunition, communication gear, and supplies for an extended mission. The Overwatch position offered a commanding view of the mountain pass below. Sarah could see the entire route the convoy would take, including several locations that would be perfect for enemy ambush positions. Chen set up her spotting equipment while Sarah prepared her rifle for long-range shooting. Range to the far end of the pass is about 1,800 meters, Chen reported after taking measurements. The convoy will be vulnerable for approximately 2 miles of road. Sarah began systematically scanning potential enemy positions through her rifle scope. The early morning light was just beginning to illuminate the mountainsides, making it easier to spot any movement or defensive preparations. "There," Chen pointed toward a cluster of rocks about 1,400 meters away. "I'm seeing movement behind those boulders. Looks like they're setting up a machine gun position." Sarah located the position and confirmed what Chen had spotted. Several fighters were positioning a heavy machine gun, with clear fields of fire across the roadway. This position could devastate the convoy's lead vehicles, trapping the entire column in the kill zone. She adjusted her scope for the range and studied the wind conditions. A light breeze was coming up the valley from the west, requiring minimal adjustment for windage. The temperature was cool but stable, providing good conditions for accurate shooting. "First target identified," Sarah reported to the command center. "Machine gun position at approximately 1,400 meters. Taking the shot." She controlled her breathing and settled her crosshairs on the machine gunner who was making final adjustments to his weapon. The shot felt perfect as it left her rifle, and she watched the target fall immediately upon impact. Target down. Machine gun position eliminated. But eliminating one position had revealed their presence to other enemy fighters in the area. Sarah could see movement at several other locations as fighters adjusted their positions and searched for the source of the sniper fire. Chen spotted the next priority target. "RPG team moving into position on the south side of the pass," she called out. "Range approximately 1,600 meters, 2 operators." Sarah swung her rifle toward the new threat and quickly acquired the RPG team. They were setting up behind a rock formation that would give them a perfect angle to attack the convoy's rear vehicles. Destroying those vehicles would trap the entire convoy in the ambush zone. Her second shot struck the RPG gunner, just as he was shouldering his weapon. The rocket-propelled grenade spun away harmlessly as the fighter collapsed. His assistant immediately grabbed the weapon, but Sarah's follow-up shot eliminated him before he could bring it to bear. RPG threat neutralized, Sarah reported while continuing to scan for additional targets. The enemy fighters were now fully aware they were being engaged by a sniper, and they began taking better cover. Sarah could see them moving between positions, trying to locate her firing position, while maintaining their ambush of the approaching convoy. Chen monitored radio communications and provided updates on the convoy's progress. "Humanitarian convoy is 30 minutes out," she warned. "We need to clear as many positions as possible before they enter the kill zone." Sarah identified a cluster of fighters positioned behind a stone wall that commanded excellent views of the roadway. They appeared to be the command element coordinating the ambush, making them a high-priority target despite their excellent cover. The range was nearly 1,700 meters, and only small portions of the targets were visible above the stone wall. Sarah would need to wait for one of them to expose himself enough for a clean shot. Her patience was rewarded when one fighter raised his head to scan the road below. Sarah's bullet struck him in the upper chest, causing the others to immediately duck down behind cover. But the psychological effect was significant. The enemy command element was now focused on survival rather than coordinating their attack. Command element disrupted, Sarah reported. They're keeping their heads down now. More enemy positions revealed themselves as fighters tried to reposition for better cover from sniper fire. Sarah engaged each threat as it appeared, methodically eliminating the most dangerous positions before the convoy arrived. Chen spotted movement on the opposite side of the valley. Sniper position on the north ridge, she called out urgently. He's setting up to engage our convoy. Range about 1,900 meters. Sarah located the enemy sniper just as he was adjusting his scope for a long-range shot. This was a battle between professionals, each trying to eliminate the other before their respective missions could be completed. At 1,900 meters, this would be one of the longest shots Sarah had ever attempted. The enemy sniper was partially concealed behind rocks, presenting only a small target, but he posed a serious threat to the humanitarian convoy, making his elimination critical. She made careful calculations for the extreme range, adjusting for bullet drop and the light wind coming up the valley. The crosshairs settled on the small portion of the enemy sniper that was visible above his cover. Sarah controlled her breathing and applied steady pressure to the trigger. The bullet's flight time at this range gave the enemy sniper time to fire his own shot before her bullet arrived. She watched through her scope as both bullets crossed paths in the valley between them. Her shot struck the enemy sniper just as his bullet impacted rocks near her position. The enemy threat was eliminated, but fragments of shattered stone had peppered the area around Sarah and Chen. Enemy sniper down, Sarah reported, brushing rock dust from her equipment. Area is clear for convoy passage. Chen checked her watch and smiled. Perfect timing. The convoy should be entering the pass in about 10 minutes. Sarah maintained overwatch as the humanitarian convoy safely traversed the mountain pass below. 8 vehicles loaded with medical supplies and food aid passed through the area that would have been a death trap if the ambush had succeeded. The convoy's commander radioed his thanks as they exited the danger area. Overwatch, this is Convoy 6. Thanks to your support, we're through clean with no casualties. The people in those villages are going to eat tonight because of what you did. As Sarah and Chen prepared to move to their extraction point, Chen shook her head in amazement. 7 confirmed kills at ranges up to 1,900 meters, she said. That's some of the finest combat shooting anyone has ever seen. Sarah felt a deep sense of satisfaction as she secured her rifle for the journey home. Tonight, her skills had saved innocent lives and ensured that humanitarian aid reached people who desperately needed it. She had proven once again that when America's warriors needed someone watching their backs, they could count on her to deliver one perfect shot when it mattered most. The helicopter that extracted them carried more than just 2 tired soldiers returning from another successful mission. It carried the knowledge that somewhere in those mountains, villagers would receive medicine and food because a female sniper had answered the call when her country needed her most. As the aircraft flew toward base, Sarah thought about her father's words from years ago. Some things are worth fighting for. Tonight had proven that protecting innocent people was definitely one of those things, and she would always be ready to take that perfect shot when duty called.